we're
Coming up on
already
Unleash
constantly,
Thyself.
especially fiction authors, right? We're building worlds in our heads all the time. And so once they understand that, the thoughts that you're thinking are what is bringing to you your reality, because the universe isn't impressing upon you anything. It's your thoughts that are pulling it to you, because it's not going to say, oh, you can't have this thing. I mean, we're so free that we can choose restraint if we want to, and we do that all the time with our thoughts. So if we want to have expansion, we need to be thinking about, okay, what does that future self who wants this millionaire author career, what did they, number one, do to get there? And number two, how are they thinking, feeling, acting right now? And what are they trying to manifest next?
Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey into the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. Now, I'm your host, Konstantin Morun, and today we welcome Carissa Andrews. Carissa is an award-winning and internationally best-selling indie author with over 25 books published. She's the CEO of Author Revolution, an online academy dedicated to helping indie authors become publishing powerhouses. She also has a podcast called the Author Revolution podcast, where she dives into topics from step-by-step strategies for indie authors to mindset techniques that elevate authors to manifest their millionaire author destiny. Now, Carissa, welcome to the show.
Constantine, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. I know you and I had a chance to chat for a few minutes before we went live here, and there are some interesting topics that I'd like us to dive into that perhaps for those listening may seem like they don't have much to do with authoring, but you will see they have a lot to do with it in the end. I know you talk a lot about manifestation and a lot about bringing the spiritual aspect of it into the work you do. Has it always been the case? Have you always infused your work with these mindfulness and spiritual practices?
Interestingly, I personally always have, but I didn't think of teaching it until probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. I started kind of dabbling into the teaching aspect, into the podcast and into what I do. But personally, it's always been a part of who I am. I've been a Reiki master since 2001, and I
Wow.
didn't start professionally writing where I decided, yes, this is the career I'm going to go into, until 2010. So I've always kind of been in, it was almost like two separate sides of my world, and then kind of ended up meshing them together.
I love that because I resonate with this so deeply. Growing up in a religious family, but then stepping away from religion and pursuing the sciences, in my case, mathematics, engineering, computer science, and I was agnostic for most of my life. And the spirituality, not tied to any religion, came back into my life strongly a few years ago. And like you, perhaps, I mean, in my case at least, I struggled to bring the science and spirituality topics together because I thought that they don't belong together or people would see me differently. And then when it all clicked, it was like, no, these are meant to be together because you cannot have the science without the spirituality. And that's what brought it together for me. What was it for you? What brought them together and be like, you know what, these were always meant to be together?
Oh gosh. Well, I grew up in a household where, on one hand, my dad he was a programmer for IBM, and he was like into computers my whole life. My mom, on the other hand, was very spiritual. She grew up Catholic, but she was very esoteric and eclectic. She liked to do a lot of, psychic work and read tarot and have oracle cards and do all the things. And so I had kind of this weird combination between science and spirituality and artist. My mom was also a painter. So it's like I had this like weird combination of things. And I always tried to reconcile the two of them together. But it wasn't until my youngest brother, became an atheist. And being the older sister, I have to like prove him wrong, right? Where it's like, no, you're not. Here's how it's working, right? So then it was like I had to dig into the science of quantum physics and figure out like, how can I explain this in a way that makes sense and makes you wrong. Of course, that was me as a child and early 20-something person. And now that I've continued to evolve and understand quantum physics on a different level, he actually became a physicist. He went off on his own tangent and became a traditional Newtonian physicist. But for me, I've always loved quantum physics. And so as I dug into that and as I began the journey of energy work, like through Reiki, I really began to understand how the two overlap and how like they marry up so nicely. It's just that, spirituality and some of the things that we talk about that are woo, it's just science that hasn't been fully explored or explained yet.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, one of my mentors always talks about this. You wouldn't have science without the spirituality.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, in today's day and age, more and more stuff gets to be proven, and then you're like, wow, this is awesome. But then you have all the other stuff, and you're like, well, if that's true, then this must be true, even though it can't be proven just yet. And then, of course, you experience it, and it's like, yeah, it has to be true.
Right. Well, and I think we kind of resonate with it. There's like a deep knowing when it's true, when there's some, whether it's just a kernel of truth or whether it is an ultimate truth. There's a knowing that you have, and you can't quite explain it just yet, but you realize on a very deep, like cellular level, that there is a universal truth here that will be uncovered, maybe in its own time, but it will eventually be uncovered for you. You know?
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something that I've been playing with more and more recently. The idea that you can drop into your body and you get to feel into anything that you're about to do or you're about to experience, and you can really tell based on the feelings that come up through you if something is for you, if it's a path of ease, if it's something that's going to be challenging and whatnot. And I resonate with what you just said about then if you are feeling something or experiencing something, you can feel it deep down. Like if you have that ease, if you have that peace, if you have that harmony, then it's likely for you,
Yeah.
created by you. And then if there is not, then maybe there's an exploration to be done.
Absolutely. Well, and I think our desires, no matter what they are our divine calling, trying to bring us to the things that we want. And sometimes the limiting beliefs that we hold in our energetic system, in our bodies, that's where some of that unease can come up. It's not necessarily that it's not meant for you. It's just that you have some limiting beliefs or some core wounds that you have to kind of
Mhm.
heal through in order to shift your beliefs, because beliefs are just thoughts you continue to think. And so if you can create a thought that says, oh, I can't have this thing, you can unwire it and rewire it to say that you can, and it can come with ease and grace and flow. And so it's just a matter of like when that kind of comes up and you go, oh, I don't think I can have this, or I think it's going to be challenging. If you're aware enough, you can pause and kind of take that break and go, okay, why do I believe that? And do I want to continue to believe that thought, or do I want it to be easy? Do I want it to be able to come faster? Do I want it to be like that? For instance, with authors, I butt up against the limiting belief all the time of the starving artist mentality, right? That lack mentality, that authors can't earn a lot of money, they can't grow quickly, they can't whatever. And it's all just a construct, right? We construct our time around what we believe like should be an appropriate amount of time, how hard we believe something's going to work. Joe Dispenza talks about that all the time, where it's like,
Yep.
when it's matter trying to influence matter, we think we have to do it in a certain amount of time. But if you're only ever living in the present moment, you can collapse that time and make it happen very quickly. And I think all of us have done that at one point or another when there's a little less resistance on something. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I just pulled that in super fast. How did that happen? But then those things that we really want, that's where we trip ourselves up, because there's that level of resistance and we really want it and we're holding on to it so hard that like that the energy just it can't be released into the universal field just yet. And sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's like pulling back the arrow, right? The further you pull it back, it's assuming you don't snap the bow, you're going to be able to release it and it's going to go pretty far. But at a certain point you have to let it go and let the energy do its thing.
Yeah, before the bow breaks, right? So
Right. Yep.
metaphorically speaking, you're absolutely right, and I love what you're saying because in the events I run, right, and the what I do with my clients when it comes to walking through my framework and my system, the first step is always looking at our thoughts and beliefs as they relate to ourselves,
Mm,
then of course people around us, and then of course the world as well. And you
yes.
realize pretty much, and of course Joe Dispenza, I mentioned him, and others, they have proven this. It's essentially and neuroscientists as well, that what you put your focus on is what becomes your
Exactly.
reality. So anything that you think, anything you believe becomes your reality. And I was fascinated by some studies I was reading recently where they've proven that your brain thinks in images and pictures.
Mm,
And also your brain does not tell the difference between real and fake, which
right.
explains why we can create this nightmare scenario in our minds and we are scared to death, and then unfortunately some parts start to manifest because our focus is on it, so we keep ignoring all the things that would move us away from it and focus on the things that would get us closer to it. So if you flip that,
Mm,
it brings you to the stuff you want, and we're not very good or not haven't been trained to always look at the positives and to enhance that. And that's why for me that's such a critical part. And I would imagine And I know it works in my case with entrepreneurs, with business people, with athletes, with any type of creator type person. So I'd imagine for you with your authors, it works brilliantly because really we are just holding ourselves back. No one else is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing with authors is that we're already constantly, especially fiction authors, right? We're building worlds in our heads all the time. And so once they understand that, the thoughts that you're thinking are what is bringing to you your reality, because the universe isn't impressing upon you anything. It's your thoughts that are pulling it to you, because it's not going to say, oh, you can't have this thing. I mean, we're so free that we can choose restraint if we want to, and we do that all the time with our thoughts. So if we want to have expansion, we need to be thinking about, okay, what does that future self who wants this millionaire author career, what did they, number one, do to get there, and number two, how are they thinking, feeling, acting right now, and what are they trying to manifest next? Because sometimes when we don't pull something in, it's almost because there's an underlying like subconscious current of, okay, if I reach that manifestation I've been trying to reach forever, that's death, because there's nothing beyond it. But if you can reach your thoughts into that person who's already manifested the thing you want, what are they trying to manifest now? Now you can see an expansion of like, this is just a stepping stone to the things that I actually want beyond that. And there's so much more like growth and expansion in playing with the energies in that kind of capacity, that people just, they don't think, they get so stuck in the, how do I do this thing, how do I make this work, how do I get and all that is focusing on, Abraham Hicks talks about the stick. Have you ever heard that analogy?
Yep. But
Yeah, so it's like wrong end of the stick. Yeah.
Well, another quote on that topic that really resonated with me a while back when I heard it from Les Brown, if you're familiar with Les at
Mhm.
all. He says the how is not your business,
Yep.
because we're so focused on the how in our lives. And I know, I mean, I'm speaking from experience because as a
Same.
trained project manager, an organization change manager, and a salesperson in corporate, the how is very important, right? You gotta follow the blueprint to a T. You gotta follow it all, and you gotta know every step before it happens. And of course, we know what happens in that case. I mean, sure, some project may go better than others, but there's always something that goes wrong in one way or in one shape, way, or form. But what you brought up is like how. If we are stuck in the how, it's kind of like I always say, it's a horse with the blinders on, because we don't see what's around us. And it's beautiful because if you think about, at least for me, and I'm curious to see what you think, a horse has the blinders on to keep them focused on the path ahead and not get scared by everything that happens around them.
Yeah.
And I see us as humans the same way, and why we have blinders on, because at some point in our past, maybe our caretakers, maybe our teachers, they were scared by what was happening around, so they put the blinders on. So in an effort to protect you, they're like, no, I'm going to teach you to be the same way, because the world is a scary place. And if you see everything, then it's going to be tough to move ahead. When in reality, by seeing everything, you now can go in a zigzag pattern. Maybe you stop a bit longer to enjoy the view here and there, and guess what, you're going to be so much farther along by the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's a level of like segment intending where you are, deciding how something gets to work for you, but the how still is not your responsibility. I mean, I'm high strategic, so like in the Clifton Strengths, strategic is number two. So for me, I love to dig into the strategic aspect of it, but at the same time, there is a level of, okay, I want this thing, and if I don't know how I'm going to get there, then I just have to hold on and maintain the understanding that that part's not my responsibility. I still can be an energetic match for, say, $50,000 a month, right? I can focus on my part of it, my energetic system aligning with $50,000 a month, easily coming in all the time. That's just the person I am. That's how it works. That's my minimum, right? And then I can open up my awareness to be led to the right things, and kind of allow, like you just said, allow the kind of like the miracles, the serendipity, the things to arise that are going to catch my interest, to guide me on the path of least resistance, to then have that thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, I love that. And speaking about vision, right, that's another big part of my process as well, because if our brains, and I always like to go by the science, because if science can support some of the stuff that we're talking about, then other people can buy into it a lot more. And
Mm.
me coming from a scientific background, it makes it easier for me as well to be like, well, this is how you can look at it working, and you can look from the science, you can look from the spirituality, and both of them tell you the same thing, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But going back to the pictures analogy there for our brain, well, that means that if I can envision a future, my vision essentially of what my future will be across all areas of my life, I can literally pull things from the future into the now,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
because I visualize them and I put them in. Now, if I do my vision, which is what I used to do in the past, and then I worry, well, how am I going to get to that? Because I know I want to have $1 million, let's say in a year from now. Well, how do I do it? And then you focus all your time on the how.
Mm,
That's where it all usually falls apart from my experience, because
absolutely.
you're missing out on so many opportunities because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's from the quantum manifestation, quantum physics perspective.
Hey, it's Konstantin here, and I want to take a brief moment to truly thank you for being a part of this incredible journey of transformation. You are the reason we are creating this content. I see you and I appreciate you. Your support truly means the world to me. I want to ask you for a small favor. I'd love for you to join our mission by hitting like, subscribe, or leaving a thoughtful comment or review. Your engagement helps others discover these insights, and together we can continue to unlock the power of authenticity and personal transformation. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Now, back to the episode.
You're basically collapsing your wave down into a particle, but then you reopen it again when you're starting to go, how do I do it? Because when you are choosing something, when you make that decision, the wave of your quantum field collapses. Now you've focused it, you've narrowed it, you've made a decision. The decision is there. The second you start questioning it, the second you start doubting it, the second you start wondering how, now all of a sudden you're giving yourself wobble to your decision, and you're allowing other possibilities in. And if we have infinite possibilities around us and the answer is always yes, like you can include anything in your reality that you want to, including doubt, then all of a sudden you have opened yourself up to the possibility of it not working. You've opened yourself up to the timeline where things may not work. Where if you make it non-negotiable and you're like, this is it. I mean, we've all had that where we've created a deadline and we're like, oh my God, this thing has to be done. And I don't care that it's the night before, my professor says the paper's due, like it's going to get done. We've all done it at one point or another. It happens because we collapse time. We muster the energy we need to be able to make it happen. We've narrowed our focus. We've collapsed the particle. There is no other option, and it gets done. Might not be perfect, but it gets done, right? And it's the same kind of concept with anything we're trying to pull into life. We're looking at the quantum field, and as soon as you're looking at something and you've made a decision that you want this thing, you can have it, but you have to go all in. And that's kind of where the like Neville Goddard and the law of assumption comes into play as well, because now all of a sudden you are just assuming, you're locking in the vibe. Like I teach manifestation in 3 steps, where it's basically you're extrapolating information and you make a decision. That's step 1. Step 2 is you lock in the vibe or make the assumption in the knowing it's yours. No matter what, you get to have it no matter what, which means you can eliminate then the doubt. You can eliminate the worry or the how or the, any of that stuff into your frequency. Step 3 then is taking any inspired action that might arise in the process of getting to that point in order to collapse the timelines, in order to bring it into your reality. And you know that by either it's the next logical step, or you just get, sometimes you get those chills and you're like, oh, I know this is something I got to do next. Or sometimes it's even a hit. Like I teach manifestation through meditation, and I have like a board certified clinical hypnotherapist is in one of my programs. Actually, all of my manifestation programs she's in, but I'm in specific the meditation program. It's called Your Future Self, and we're constantly working on like the mindset and being able to get into that place of like, this is yours. You get to have these things, and the next logical step is going to arise. And sometimes it happens through those meditations. I've had that happen where I'm like, I don't know why I'm being drawn to this person or being drawn to this situation. And then in a meditation, I'll be like, oh, it just becomes very clear. It's almost like the answer is downloaded into my brain. I'm like, oh, this is why I had to ask Jen Sincero to come on my podcast, and we're going to be interviewing her. And she said yes already, even though I had no idea if she's going to say yes and all the things. But now she's going to be interviewed. It's like there's this process where all of a sudden you realize it. Yeah. So for like the manifestation courses that I have a board certified clinical hypnotherapist and great friend who comes into like specifically our program called Your Future Self. And in that program, we're digging into mindset work. We're digging into, reprogramming our subconscious mind. We're doing a lot of work in there. But what's been interesting is that those insights, not only do they come in the form of, the next logical step or the way that, you get those tingles and you know that this is obviously a direction I need to go. But sometimes you get those hits where you were guided somewhere and you're not quite sure why. And all of a sudden in your meditations, you're even like, oh, I now understand why I had to do this thing and why these steps took place. I had this happen just recently. I for my anniversary, we went to Barnes and Noble because, of course, that's what we do, right? You go to the bookstore on your anniversary. And for whatever reason, Jen Sincero's "You're a Badass" was calling to me, and I've had her "You're a Badass at Making Money" for a long time. For some reason, I was like, I have to buy this book. I don't know why. I got the book. I read it within the first week. Ended up going on to read "You're a Badass at Making Money," and I was just called to like, does she have group coaching? So I went into her website. Sure enough, she was starting group coaching in like 3 weeks from the time that I actually looked. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So I hopped into that, and I still didn't know why I was in this thing, because I know pretty much everything that she's teaching. I know it from her perspective too, because I've read her books and I kind of get where she's coming from. I've been studying manifestation for a long time, but I just felt called and I wasn't sure why. And she had this group coaching call system where you come in and you ask questions to her and she answers. And I remember thinking, well, I don't really have any questions I have of her, but it's really kind of interesting to be in this call and to see how things are going. The meditation I had the day after that first call, I got the insight, well, where it was like literally, it felt like connection after connection, where I could see, oh, me buying the book, me reading the book, me reading the next book, me wanting to go into things because she's supposed to come on my podcast. And I was like, she is now? Like, wait, what? Okay. And so, yes, I'm going to ask her a question, but it's not going to be a typical question. She's going to be asked to come onto the podcast. I was like, all right. Oh, here we go then. And so actually, like, I ended up having to wait a full month before I could ask her the question, because the next time she did a call every other week. And so 2 weeks later, I come onto the call, raise my hand, and I'm like 3 people away before they end the call. I was like, oh, okay. So now I got to wait another 2 weeks. And so a full month goes by. I ask her the question and she's like, oh, okay, well, send me an email. Let me know how things go. Another full month later, she finally signed up and she's going to be coming onto the podcast. In fact, I get to interview her in a couple of weeks now. But it was just like, I would never personally have gone, oh, I need to interview Jen Sincero and bring her onto the podcast. But I saw the entire process in a meditation. And so sometimes it's like literal nudges. Sometimes it's just next logical steps that you're being led to. And sometimes it's like you're just dropped in. I don't know if it's your guides, your higher self, source, like something bigger than you is trying to show you a path of least resistance somehow. And I still don't know what the meaning of it is, other than she's going to be on the show. We're going to have a great conversation. But it feels bigger than that. So I don't know. I still have no idea what to expect. But do you see what I mean? It like just happens. Sometimes serendipity happens like that.
And what came out for me that as you're talking about it is that not only were you not tied to the how, you weren't tied to the outcome either.
Mm.
Right? Because sometimes you
Yeah.
could be like, well, why should I join this coaching group session? Because that's what came up for us. Like, and then you try to justify the potential outcome. And you kept yourself open. Like you said, you still don't know why or
Yeah.
what the result is, but you're trusting the process and it will manifest or show itself by the end of it. And I imagine, or not imagine, I know from experience as well, that's a tough thing to do, because usually as we progress with this journey, if we say, okay, the how is not my business, I'm not going to focus on the how as much, it gets revealed. We still have some tie-ins to the outcome. Like we have some desire, we have some expectations, even maybe, of course, intentions. And when you can distance yourself even from the potential outcome of it, and know that whatever happens is in your highest good, I feel that's when you really tapped into the power of what you're discussing about. And I can't say I'm there yet. Sometimes I catch myself, and it's really beautiful to see, and that's such a beautiful example from your end.
Yeah. Yeah. And catching yourself is the first step, because you can't change what you can't see. Right. So it's
Of
like, if
course.
you're going to keep working through limiting beliefs and keep operating from them and not ever stop to question them, you're going to just keep replaying that timeline out. Right. People talk about blocks a lot, and I'm not a huge fan of the concept of blocks, because to me, I think what's really just going on is you've diverged timelines. You are continuing to manifest all the time, no matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you believe in manifestation or not. You're constantly creating the life that you're living, and you're doing it either consciously, intentionally, or unconsciously. And so when you're operating from core wounds or past beliefs or limiting beliefs, you're still manifesting. You're still creating your future. It's just that if you have a belief that is in a different like vibrational frequency, and the person you are right now can't quite get there, you can't hop from there to there. You have to slowly get your beliefs and thoughts into alignment with that other person, that other version of you, in order to get there. So it's not a block. It's just that's that version of you that believes it can't happen. So how do you shift into the person who can? And the only way you can do that is through awareness. You have to catch those thoughts and reframe them.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's yeah. I mean, even for me, that's why that's the first step. Because when in part of my journey a few years back, I didn't start that. I started more with like, okay, let's get clear on my identity, who I am, at more of the surface level, not the thoughts and belief level, right? And then you realize that wait, I can make progress because something is holding me back. And then you realize, well, it is my beliefs, it is my thought patterns that are holding me back.
Mm.
So how do we change those? And it always starts with awareness for me, at least. I always say it's half the battle. If you're not aware of something, you can't change it. So how do we become aware? And then the option of choice gets presented. So now
Yeah.
I have a choice. Do you allow the same story to play out and
Yep.
you likely know how it ends, you know the outcome, or do you change the story and be amazed at the outcome that comes out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the universe wants to surprise and delight you. I mean, in the example of Jen Sincero, it's like I didn't know anything about bringing her onto the show, and all of a sudden I'm like presented with this opportunity of you can ask her. I didn't have to. I didn't have to go with that nudge that the universe was giving me in that meditation. But because 2 months earlier I had made the decision, and I even declared it on my podcast myself, where I'm like, okay, I'm doing these meditations. It's an experiment, and anything that comes up, I'm going to take action on. I was like, well, shoot, now I got to take action on this. And I'm not typically the kind of person that'll hunt someone down and be like, hey, I'm gonna ask you to do this thing. So it was interesting just to see that kind of it, because it made me step out of my own personal comfort zone and create that choice point of going, am I going to continue to just kind of play on the sidelines and watch other people, or am I going to step into my greatness, ask the question? And in the meditation, I was even told like the answers are already yes, but I still had to wait another month after I asked the question before she finally signed up. And then another month after that before she could come on the show. So it's like, it's not in our timeline, it's in like universal flow timeline. And so if you don't hold on too tightly to the outcome, it will arrive. You just have to kind of let go a little bit of those restraints, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. That's such a beautiful example too. I was wondering, like what came up for me as you're sharing that is like you had a meditation, the plan was revealed, and you went ahead with the plan. That's one of the hows, right? Because the how was
Right.
revealed in your case.
Yeah.
I wonder if you didn't follow through on the how, was it going to be manifested a different way? And I would imagine that yes, probably would have manifested a different way,
Yep.
or a different timeline. But that's always beautiful to see because now you trusted that whatever was being shown to you is the path. And I feel like for a lot of us, the trust part is a big, big piece as well because you get now to a point where you have the awareness,
Yep.
you're about to make a choice, and now you're being asked to trust either in messages you're getting or messages you're seeing or
Yeah.
something happening in your life. And I feel for many people, that's such a difficult thing to do.
Well, I think if you come at it from the perspective of curiosity, or like I'm going to experiment with this and just see what happens, and then go along with whatever happens, there's a lot less, I guess, a lot less anxiety around how to, a lot less like
Mhm.
emotional charge, and you can just kind of be curious about it and be like, let's see what happens. I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to play out. And I think you're right, to your point of how like it could have manifested something or along the lines, or whatever the outcome might be, may manifest later on if you didn't take action. But it's probably going to take longer, because when we're asking for something to come in, we're also kind of, the underlying thought process or the underlying vibration is that we want it to come in pretty
Yeah,
quickly. We don't want it to take forever, right? And so if we do it and we're looking for the how, and how trying to make it happen, and we're trying to effort, and we're trying to plan all the things, our brains can't come up with the grand plan that's going to be the quickest path of least resistance, right? And so when the path of least resistance is revealed and you go, no, I can't do that, then they go, okay, take your time, let me know when you're ready. you know or you could just take action and see what happens, and play with it in the, let's see what happens. Show me the evidence, universe. I want to see how this works.
exactly. And what I feel happens for a lot of us, and again, I speak from practical experience here, is that when we bring it into our brain area, right, coming from the mind to solve a problem, we're using all of our known stories, known and unknown. When I say unknown, it's more like at the subconscious level.
Yeah.
So we're trying to solve this new problem based on like what worked and didn't work in the past for us without opening ourselves up to all the other possibilities.
Mm.
And when we come out of the mind, if we go into the heart and into the intuition aspect of us, then not only can we tap into what we know, what we think we know, but into the global consciousness field, right? Into our full knowing as a soul.
Yes.
And that's what you did in that case, and what most people do when they end up being in the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so key too, because when you go in and you drop into yourself, into your heart center or into your energy centers and awaken that alignment, you're going to come at things so vastly differently than you would if you're just trying to think about how it's going to work, because that conscious mind is, it's a great pattern detector. It's great at sifting and sorting, but it's not super good at like being able to decipher frequency. That has to come from like your intuition. It has to come from your alignment to who you are and then how you play out in the grand tapestry of the quantum field, right?
Mhm.
And so if you want to pull in something, you have to be, number one, aligned for yourself, but you have to be in alignment with the thing that you're trying to pull in too. And sometimes we block ourselves. Not a big fan of the word block, but we do block ourselves in the way that like our thoughts shut it down.
They do, they do. And what comes up for me, I was having a beautiful meditation journey the other day, and I was reminded of this is something that I keep seeing as a reminder, which is asking the question or even being open to the question of what if this could be easy and simple, like
Yeah.
whatever challenge you're going through right now. And then if you ask yourself that question, which is how this got prompted for me, let's say I'm going through a challenge, I'm hosting this event in a few days, and I want to get a bunch of people at the event, and it feels challenging at times, but what if it could be easy? And you say, well, of course it has to be, well, it gets to be easy because everything gets to be easy if we get out of our own way.
Yeah.
And then the next logical question or spiritual question could come in and say, well, if you know it's going to be easy and simple, then what would it look like? And now
Another
you're
great question to ask is if I'm already on the other side of it and it was quick and easy and it did happen simply, how would I be feeling now? And what would I know about how it became quick and easy? And
exactly
let those answers come in too, because sometimes when we hop over the event itself, because the event itself gets so charged, we can kind of bypass that and our brain goes, well, it could be easy because I did this or I did that or I played around with this or I let go of that. So it's like it's a different question to kind of play around with it at that point as well.
yeah, exactly. It gets to open up so much more.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like what is done for me and some of the people I get to work with is that it at least gets you to pause and reflect,
Mm,
because we're so conditioned to think that if it's easy or simple or easy and simple, then it must not be what you're looking for. It must
right.
not be for you, right? Because it has to be hard, it has to be challenging, it has to fill in the blanks.
Right, and
And
that's
that-
so untrue. It's like when you think about your natural gifts, they come easy, right? The things that light you up, the things you enjoy, the things that bring you like so much satisfaction, they come easy to you because they're meant for you. And when they're meant for you, they do come easy. And if we are putting that it has to be challenging in order to do the thing, yeah, the universe goes, okay, if you want it challenging, here you go, I'll give it to you. But you can make the choice of it, allowing it to be easy and just being in that receptivity mode and going, universe, bring it to me. Delight me, surprise me, I'm ready. Like it's
yeah,
up to you.
it reminds me of something I went through maybe 6 months ago now. That's such an interesting story now looking back at it, and it reminds me of exactly what you just said, which is the idea that I've always been up to this point not afraid but disliking cold water.
Mm,
And at this scenario, I'm at a spa, a Nordic spa, that they have the cold plunge, they have the hot tubs, and I'm in Canada, so this 6 months ago puts us in January. It's a cold day, you can imagine, in the low teens or even lower than that. And I know that the cold plunge is really good for you after, especially after you spend time in a heated sauna or, of course, in the hot tub itself. And up to this point, I was always fighting fear with fear. I was like, I had this fear of going in the water, and I'm like, I know I'm going to push through it. I'm a man, I got to do it and go through it. And on this particular occasion, coming out of some meditations much earlier in the day, I was, building my courage up to go into the water, into the cold water, and I felt the fear rise up. And now, what I would normally do is I would push it away and be like, no, 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 not now. I'm going to go through you, and I'm going to go be miserable in the cold plunge. And then to me, that felt like winning, right? Because I'm like, well, I manned up. I stayed in there for like half a minute, whatever it was. But then the most beautiful thing happened. I said, what if I'm approaching this the wrong way? What if there's another way you can do this? And this was all happening really fast in my field. Mm-hmm. And I dropped meditation just to feel into it. And in my case, what it did and what the universe did and what I needed in the moment was it literally, the more questions I asked, it started to form a vision of something that happened when I was 2 years old, and my mom fell in a cold lake with me in her arms. Ooh. And tried to keep me above water and stuff, but I could feel her fear for her life, for my life, for everything else that happened around, and the fear of the unknown that happens next. Now, of course, nothing, quote unquote, bad happened. My father was there, got her out of the water, and me. And you wouldn't think twice about that. Now, of course, since then, she has been traumatized to not go near bodies of water. And I didn't know any of that when this was presented to me in my vision. And I realized that what I had done is I had borrowed, so to speak, her fear. Because it wasn't mine. I remember seeing, like, feeling it. It's like I was just looking around, kind of confused. And I'm like, I could feel the energy of this woman next to me. And then it became mine. So then all my life I had this dislike for cold water, which was hiding the fact that it in fact was a fear below the surface. So as I was experiencing all of this, and because I was the observer, I was just like, that's interesting, and I let it go. And from that moment on, my fear for cold water disappeared to the point that I can go into the cold plunges and stay for 5, 6, 7 minutes until my body tells me, hey, it's a bit cold, you got to get out.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's interesting, because I never thought of it that way. And it can be simple and easy, because I was trying to fight it and make it hard when all I had to do was get curious and not try to force anything, just allow it to be shown whichever way it had to be shown.
Yeah, I think so many of us, and it's not just men, I think so many, especially the spiritual types, right? We have these emotions that are lower on the emotional scale, and we think, oh, I don't want to feel those emotions because I'm supposed to be joyful, I'm supposed to be in bliss, I'm supposed to always be this thing, but you're still having a human experience. And so the only way to truly transmute and alchemize that energy is to, number one, observe it, see how it feels, see what's coming up, figure out why it's there, and then let it go. But let it go with gratitude, let it go with a blessing, let it go with the knowing that it doesn't have to stay in your system, right? There's a book out there, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And the book talks about this exact thing, where it's like, when you have these feelings and you just stuff them down thinking that that's the best way to handle them, you're going to end up acting them out in other ways or having fears that aren't your own. You're going to have so much going on in your energetic field. And until you can look at them and heal those wounds, you can't move past them, and you can't become the highest expression of yourself. So I think that's really part of our human journey, where we're digging through all of that, and we're trying to heal those wounds so that we can manifest faster, so that we can create the life we want quicker, so that we're not taking on the societal pressures or beliefs that are kind of circulating at this time. It's like, I feel like we're really, and it's not just authors, it's not just entrepreneurs. I feel like everyone is trying to get to this point where we understand our human condition better so that we can next level the way that things work for us. How about you? Do you feel that too?
That's beautiful. Absolutely. I would say that there's a variation of that I feel like, in the sense that I personally believe that, of course, we are a soul having a human experience, like you mentioned as well, and we are all knowing. But when we come into this life, for whatever reason, we choose to forget. And there's many interpretations of that. And our journey is just a journey of remembering, remembering our power, remembering who we are.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine, she talks about that also as part of our journey, or maybe the main reason of our journey, is for forgiveness. And forgiveness can be said as a full word, just forgiveness, I'm forgiving you, myself, whatever. But also, if you split it up, it's forgiving, right? Or forgiveness, like to
Mm.
actually give others.
Yeah.
And what I've realized that that's really what happens, because in me, forgive, like doing something to give to others, like this conversation with you right now, given to myself and the audience, I'm learning so much in the process, and I'm remembering in the process, because I'm not sure
Yeah.
about you, but since being on this path of spirituality and being more open to things, there are things I quote unquote remember, but then I promptly forget them, and I have to
Yeah.
be reminded again
Yep.
and then again sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's that spiritual remembrance journey, because so many people think that it's going to be like this one and done. Oh, once you understand and master this thing, you got it. But for a lot of us, especially on the spiritual journey, it's more like a remembrance cyclone. Like you're constantly either you're going from the top where you're like just like answering and hearing and understanding this thing, and every time you kind of cycle through it, it gets quicker and easier until you finally, now you got it at the very end. But there is other times where you make that quantum leap where it's like, of course, this makes total sense. I get it. Now it's locked in. I don't have to go through this again. And it can be that easy, but sometimes I think there's a level of like, I want to understand this really deeply. This is a soul mission for me to get this concept and really nail it down. And so that's where that cycle kind of keeps repeating itself. And sometimes it has to do with healing as well. Like we do have subconscious healing that has to take place, and so we kind of cycle through old wounds or old repetition, even when we think we've moved beyond it. But I think there's this level of, I really want to understand this resonance so deeply that I don't repeat it next time, or I don't repeat it, going forward after a certain point or whatever, you know?
Yes, and in that process, I feel like it's also about, once you get through that yourself to some degree, if you're the forgiving part again, you start to give this to others, which in turn feeds back, and it solidifies everything for you and propels you even further on whatever path this was on. So in the cycle of giving, you get so much back in return yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
So when it comes to working with authors right now, since that's something that we haven't touched much on, what would you say the biggest challenge is that most people are facing and they're not even realizing?
Oh goodness, definitely their lack mentality. Like in the indie author space, because I've been teaching this now professionally. Author Revolution has been around since 2019, and so it's been 5 years. I've been teaching authors how to write books consistently. I have a program called Rapid Release Roadmap where I'm teaching them literally how to plan, write, publish, promote 4 books every single year, or faster if that's what they choose to do. I personally think that's a bit much, but four is a pretty consistent cadence, right? I teach them how to use ChatGPT. I teach them how to manifest. I teach them how to do a lot of things. But their mindset is really the thing that'll trip them up every single time. Because if they want a successful author career and they want this thing to go big and they want it to become their life, but they don't think they can have it, they're going to sit themselves firmly in a place of resistance where they
Mhm.
are, I want it, but I want it, but. And so teaching them and talking about manifestation, specifically like the millionaire author destiny part of it, the reason I chose that term was because I was butting up against such a limiting belief. Like they didn't even think they could make $100,000. So I was like, okay, we're going to next level that. We're going to start talking millionaire author so that we can start letting you know and reach for that next bigger level. What if it's an 8-figure author? Like what is it that you want to become and how can you get there? Because you can do have anything you want. And so mindset is the biggest trip up. It absolutely trips them up all the time. And so getting them to first acknowledge that it's their mindset. It's not the marketplace. It's not readers. It's not conditioning around your genre. It's not because you didn't write to market. It's because your mindset is keeping your reality in this bubble. And so you have to stop and then go, okay, what about the way that I view the world? What about the way that I view this publishing industry? What about the way that I believe about myself, my writing, is keeping me stuck in this bubble? And how do I reframe it? How do I shift it? What would I rather have instead? And once they can start looking at it in that regard, that their experience with reality is so individualistic, because there are authors who are making $1 billion a year. There are authors who are making multi-millions a year. There are authors in your genre that are making that much money. So if them, why not you? The only difference is that they have the energy behind them backing them up. Their belief systems aren't keeping them locked in a place that doesn't allow for it to come through. So in order to get into the receiving mode, then you have to be able to catch yourself in that thought, reframe the thought, and keep doing it until that thought becomes your new belief structure, and that becomes your like operating system for how reality works for you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I resonate with so deeply with that. Now I know you call it mindset, and for me, I've had a challenge with that for a while because there's so many mindset books out there, and what's interesting is that a lot of them focus, at least from my experience, on frameworks and things you can incorporate a mindset of a let's say an amazing athlete or an amazing author or whatever. But I feel like they never go deep enough to exactly what you're talking about, which is your thoughts and beliefs creating the reality you have.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I call it your psychology or your foundation, which sits below the mindset, because mindset comes on top of it once you get good at it. Because I'll give you an example. For me, I mean, I've always been a top performer and a high achiever in the corporate world and entrepreneurial world, right? Working with Microsoft and other big places, and I always climbed to the top. But I never had this solid foundation of the beliefs in me because I relied on what others were telling me way too much.
Yeah.
The moment I shifted that, all the various mindsets I was trying to incorporate that weren't sticking got to stick. And of course, there's always more, you could say more work in progress and more things to refine and remember. But it's really, if you don't have the foundation, then nothing else can be built on top. It's almost like you want a life that's like the equivalent of a five-story building, yet you have a foundation that can only support a one-level home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so key. I'm actually in the process of writing my next nonfiction book. So I've mostly focused on fiction. I have one nonfiction book that's out, but the new one that's coming out this November is called Write Your Reality, and it digs right into that, where it's about the foundation, about what your reality looks like and why it's working and operating the way it is for you, so that you can leap over the mindsets that are keeping you. And to me, mindset is really just like your thoughts and your beliefs, because about anything, it doesn't matter if it's your author career, it doesn't matter if it's
Yeah.
about the world, whatever. It's like, it's literally the way that you have constructed your reality, and it encompasses everything. So once you start to shift in specific how your mindset agrees with the thoughts that you think, and if they aren't in alignment with the person you're trying to become, you have to let those ones fall away and start shifting into the thoughts that are more in alignment with the person you're trying to become. That's all there is to manifesting the life that you want. It's letting those. I was talking with a friend yesterday about time, and about how when we're trying to create, let's say it's a millionaire author destiny, and we don't know the how of how we're going to get there. The first thing you want to do is think about, like, what were the steps that version of you would have taken, and are you doing those things right now, or are there elements or aspects that you in your subconscious mind or in your conscious mind believe that you have to do in order to be that person? Are you doing them, or are you avoiding them? Like, are you doing the TikToks because you believe TikTok has to be like the thing? Are you, sending out emails because you believe your email list has to be the thing? Are you going to events because you believe underlying that has to be are you writing in romance because you think only romance authors get to be that thing? You know what I mean? It's like there's all these different ways that we view our world, and then we get irritated because things haven't come in. But when you look at what you believe about that particular, like, let's say it's the publishing industry, and you're not operating as the person that would then have those things, you're in direct discord with everything you're trying to create.
Oh, so true. I love that. Now, you talked about fiction books, right? And you said you wrote a lot, so probably 20 plus at this point, right? At
Yep.
least, like that.
Yeah.
How much truth is in fiction, especially for you when you write it?
Oh
How much comes
gosh.
from a place of like mirroring reality, but
Yeah.
perhaps in a different way?
Well, for me, I love both. So when I went to school, originally I was going to be an archaeologist because I love the concept of like looking at ancient art history and literature and all the things that are going on. And like, can we uncover anything new? Can we discover some cool stuff? And when I went to school for archaeology, I hated my anthropology teacher. He was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I would have had to have him through all 4 years. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And so I ended up like doing like an interdisciplinary studies thing where I did shift my focus into ancient art history and literature. And so for me, that was where my fascination was. And rather than uncovering truths like in the ground, what ended up happening is I'm uncovering truths of the mind. Like I'm uncovering the truths of spirituality. I'm then lifting them from that place and putting them into my books. I use mythology in my urban fantasy, for instance. So you're going to see things like the Morai sisters. You're going to see things like the different elements of, you know, like Apollo and Athena and like different. I like Greek mythology. I also like Egyptian mythology, but I actually haven't brought that into my writing a whole lot. But I, for whatever reason, I like Greek mythology to pull in a lot of different things. I use Latin a lot of the times in my urban fantasy. I use energy work. I use psychic abilities. I talk about that sort of thing from an area or a level of knowing that I already know when I am writing those books. And so there is always like this stream of truth that underlies it all. And whether or not people get that, it doesn't matter. The ones that do, like they have a deeper experience, and that's really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, well, also coming up here on the end of our time together, for at least for this episode, is there anything that's coming up for you that you'd like to share with the audience, or even, you know, with yourself or me or anyone listening?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always working on new things. We just finished up an audiobooks for authors course, but when it comes to manifestation, when it comes to that sort of thing, I have different programs for it. So, like, you know, being able to let go of your poverty mentality, for instance, that's the abundant author activation. And I have a course on how to get into alignment and how to be in alignment with your manifestation. So, it's technically step 2 in the manifestation process. I have a large course called Millionaire Author Manifestation, which is a 12-week course. It only opens once a year. So in February, end of February, typically, that will open. So there's a wait list for that. But the biggest thing that we do ongoing, that's really kind of the heart and soul of how Tammy and I are working with things. Tammy is the board certified clinical hypnotherapist, is the Your Future Self program, where it's like, it was built kind of like Beachbody in mind, where you have like a program. It's 4 weeks long for the most part. All of them are 4 weeks long, except for there's a like a NaNoWriMo one, and then there's also like a tools one. So there's less in that particular program, but you get to choose how to meditate every single day. It's kind of like Mind Valley, actually, come to think of it as well. But I only started looking into Mind Valley recently, so it's like kind of new for me. But you're like, as an author, we've gotten often the question of like, what should I be meditating? How should I be working with this now that the programs are over? Like, because all of the abundant author stuff and the millionaire author stuff have meditations and things in it. But what can I do once those programs are over? So we create like 4 weeks typically, and we have a theme. So it's money, it's new beginnings. It could be loving your characters or loving your author career. It could be the healthy author, chakras, quantum manifestation. Like we've got different programs. And so whatever you want to do, you come in knowing that you've got a 4 weeks set of meditations or hypnoses based around this concept of the month that we're working with. And so then they don't have to think about like, what meditation do I do today? They just go to the one for today. And we're doing it every single month. We're still creating programs. We're not, it's not like, oh, we've created 8, now that's all you have. It's like every single month we're coming up with new content. And that's kind of been our passion, because we're trying to get into that subconscious programming for authors and help them to, you know, outroot some of those limiting beliefs and to start shifting their timelines, to start shifting into a place of you get to have whatever it is you're trying to bring in. And so that's probably the biggest one. In the fall, we're going to be I'm going to be dropping the Kickstarter for Write Your Reality. So that'll be coming out as well.
Beautiful. Wow. So much exciting stuff. Well, I want to thank you, Carissa, for your time, because it's such a beautiful conversation, and I can't wait to continue my conversations with you.
Thank you so much, Constantine. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of personal transformation. Your presence and engagement are at the heart of what we do, and I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and thirst for knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment. Please consider showing your support by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment, or writing a review. Your engagement not only fuels our mission, but also helps others discover these insights. For more daily guidance on personal transformation across the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms, be sure to visit our website at unleashthyself.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Unleash Thyself Today, TikTok and YouTube at Unleash Thyself, and there we post daily content designed to inspire and empower you on your journey. If you have any specific thoughts, questions, or feedback, I truly value your input. I would love to hear from you. Together, we're building a community united in authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you for being a part of this movement. Until next time, continue to embrace your true self and live a life on purpose, with purpose. See you in the next episode.